All right, let's dive right in.
Yeah.
We all know that feeling, right? That awkward, maybe even kind of squirm-inducing moment when the topic of exes comes up with your partner.
It can definitely be a little bit tricky, yeah.
Totally. So we got a bunch of interesting sources from you guys on how to handle this whole exes thing.
I'm excited to get into it.
Me too. Because let's be honest, it's a question almost everyone in a relationship has probably pondered at some point, right? Like, should you share your past relationship experiences?
Mm.
Or are some things better left unsaid, buried in the past?
It's a valid question.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what our deep dive today is all about. We're going to explore both sides of this debate, weighing the pros and cons of talking about exes so that hopefully, by the end of this, you'll feel more confident and equipped to make those decisions for yourself in your own love life.
Sounds good.
So one of the first things that jumped out at me from these sources was this emphasis on honesty and transparency. It's like being open about your past can actually be a really powerful way to build trust with your partner.
Yeah, that's spot on. I think a lot of people get tripped up thinking that transparency means revealing every single detail about their past relationships.
Right, like giving them a play-by-play rundown of every date and every, disagreement.
Exactly. But it's really not about that. It's more about, like you said, showing your partner that you're open and honest, that you're not hiding major parts of your past. Because let's face it, if you start deliberately concealing things, it's going to erode trust down the line.
Totally. Like, wouldn't you be more suspicious if you found out your partner was purposely keeping things from you, even if those things weren't, necessarily a big deal?
Oh, absolutely. It's the hiding it that becomes the issue, not necessarily what's being hidden. And you know what else is interesting? Some of the experts we're looking at today suggest that these conversations about past relationships, when approached with the right intentions, can actually help you both grow, individually and as a couple.
Ooh, I like that. Like, it's not just about airing dirty laundry. It can be a chance to learn from the past and use that knowledge to move forward in a healthier way.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. Talking about your past relationships can help you identify patterns in your own choices and behaviors. And sometimes you don't even realize those patterns exist until you start talking about them out loud.
That's so true. I have a friend, this is totally hypothetical, of course, but she kept finding herself dating workaholics, like
Why
one
not?
after another. And it wasn't until she started reflecting on those past relationships, talking about them with a therapist, that she realized there was this pattern of her being attracted to people who were emotionally unavailable.
That's a perfect example because once she recognized that pattern, she could start to understand why it was happening. Was she subconsciously recreating some dynamic from her childhood? Was she afraid of intimacy?
Right. And then, armed with that self-awareness, she could start breaking the cycle, consciously choosing partners who are more present and emotionally available.
Exactly. So it's like by understanding those patterns from your past, you can actually make more informed choices in the present. And then sharing those insights with your partner, that helps them understand you on a deeper level too.
It's like you're giving them a little window into your relationship history, which in turn builds more trust and understanding in your current relationship.
Hmm.
Okay, but we can't talk about this without addressing the big green jealous monster in the room, right?
You mean jealousy?
Yeah, because let's be real. It's totally normal to feel a pang of jealousy when the topic of exes comes up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's human nature.
Absolutely. And you know what? Our sources really emphasize that it's super important to acknowledge those feelings of jealousy and not just try to brush them under the rug.
Oh, I agree. Like, pretending those feelings aren't there, that's not helpful.
Nope. Instead, the key is to address them constructively. Talk to your partner about what's triggering those feelings, but without letting jealousy dominate the conversation, right? You don't want to get bogged down in comparing yourself to their exes.
Ugh, no. Comparison is the thief of joy, as they say.
So true. Instead, you can try to shift the focus to understanding why you're feeling jealous. Like, what are those feelings telling you about your own needs or insecurities within the relationship?
Right. Maybe you need more reassurance from your partner. Or maybe you're worried about something specific, like them still being in contact with their ex. Whatever it is, talking about it openly and honestly, instead of letting those jealous feelings fester, that's the best way to deal with it.
I couldn't agree more. And for a long time, I used to think that any mention of exes was like completely off limits. Like it was this forbidden topic that you just didn't talk about.
Oh, yeah, I was the same way. Like, I thought bringing up the past would just store up unnecessary drama.
Right. But actually, one of the experts in our sources brings up a really interesting point. They say that constantly avoiding the topic of exes can actually be a red flag.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, because it's almost like you're trying to erase a part of who you are, you know? And it can create the sense of secrecy and distrust, which is the opposite of what you want in a healthy relationship.
Huh. That's a good point. It's like you're not acknowledging that you had a life before your current partner, which everyone does.
Exactly. We all have a past, and pretending it doesn't exist is not only unrealistic, but it can also be kind of damaging to your current relationship.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, but even if we agree that talking about exes can be healthy, isn't there also something to be said for timing? Like, maybe it's not the best idea to delve into these potentially sensitive conversations right off the bat.
Absolutely. Timing is everything, and the sources we're looking at today definitely emphasize that.
Like, you wouldn't want to bring up your messy breakup on the first date.
Oh, no. That would probably send them running for the hills.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. So what do our experts suggest? When is the right time to start having these deeper conversations about past loves?
Well, they suggest waiting until you've reached certain relationship milestones. You know, things like becoming exclusive, meeting each other's families. Those are big steps that indicate a growing level of commitment and trust.
Right. It's like once you've established that solid foundation, you're in a much better position to navigate these potentially sensitive subjects.
Exactly. Because by then, hopefully, you've both demonstrated that you're invested in the relationship, that you're committed to making it work, and that creates a much safer space to have those more vulnerable conversations.
Makes sense. But what about those times when the topic of exes comes up more organically? You know, maybe you're out to dinner and a song comes on that reminds you of an ex, or something happens that triggers a memory.
That's a great question. And our sources actually offer some really helpful guidance for navigating those spontaneous moments. What they emphasize is keeping the conversation relevant to the present. So, for instance, let's say you're facing a challenge in your current relationship, and it reminds you of a similar situation you experienced in a past relationship.
Oh, I see. So you might share that anecdote to help your partner understand your perspective, right?
Exactly. Like, hey, this reminds me of a time when. And by sharing that experience, you're not just rehashing the past for no reason. You're using it to provide valuable insight to your partner to help them better understand your reactions and your needs in the present moment.
Right. So it's not about dredging up the past for the sake of it. It's about using those experiences, if and when they're relevant, to strengthen your current bond.
Precisely. However, and this is super important, the experts also stress that it's crucial to make sure both partners are comfortable with the direction of the conversation.
Right. Like if your partner starts to feel uncomfortable or like they're being interrogated, that's a sign to dial it back.
Exactly. And setting clear boundaries is also really important. You know, deciding together what feels appropriate to share and what feels like maybe it's crossing a line.
Right. Because ultimately you want to make sure these conversations are bringing you closer together, not driving a wedge between you.
Agreed. So to sum it all up, transparency and open communication about the past can be really healthy for a relationship, but it's about finding that balance.
I love that. So much good stuff here. Okay, let's do a quick recap of what we've learned. We talked about how open communication about past relationships can actually build trust, but it's not about spilling every little detail, right? It's about being honest and upfront with your partner.
Right. And we talked about how reflecting on past relationships can help you identify patterns in your choices, which can be super valuable for personal growth.
And of course, we can't forget about jealousy. It's a normal emotion, but it's important to address those feelings constructively and not let them derail your current relationship.
Totally. And finally, we discussed the importance of timing, waiting until you've built a strong foundation of trust and commitment before diving into those deeper conversations about exes.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now that we've covered all that, here's something I want you to think about as you navigate your own relationships. Think back to a time when learning about your partner's past relationship actually helped you understand them better. Like maybe it shed light on a fear they have or explained why they react a certain way in certain situations. How did that knowledge, that little glimpse into their history, ultimately strengthen your connection?
That's a great question to reflect on.
I think so too. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today's Deep Dives. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
See you then.